Okay, good morning. My name is Ria Holford. I am in theory and pedagogy in the study of reading. My presentation today is about the reading process to understand and to teach in the 21st century. Okay, so we're going to get started. I'm actually presenting to my kindergarten team. My grade chair is Rabina Combs. My team member is Maya Austin. And I have another team member, Mr. Custis, that will join us shortly. So we're going to start off with the reading process is a transactional view. It encompasses the reader and, the text that they're reading, and it's transactional. It also consists of immediate, situational, and social context, and a broader situational and social context. So this transactional view was taken from the source of the reading process from Connie Weaver. So students have reading challenges. Here are some reading challenges of students. Students skip difficult words and continue to read on despite the loss of meaning. Students get stuck on a difficult word and give up reading. Students read word for word with little or no comprehension, and students have little anticipation. Students seldom reread and self-correct. So this presentation will help you know about the reading process and what it entails in today's classroom. Okay. The three cueing systems of the English language includes graphophonic cues, semantic cues, and syntax cues. Okay. We also have pragmatic. So the context of pragmatic. So we're going to discuss syntax cues, semantic cues, graphophonic cues, and pragmatic cues. Okay, syntactic cues is about structure. Does it sound right to the student? Grammatical pattern, including signals proved by word ending, function words, and word order. The questions which students should ask is, when I covered up this word in the text, how do I know what word will be appropriate? And when I was reading and left out a word, how do I know what the word is in the text? So these are questions that students can ask themselves. Okay. We also have semantic cues, which discusses meaning. Does it make sense? The context of the sentence and or passage, the background knowledge and prior experience. Questions that students can ask themselves are, what do I know about the topic already? What do I need to know? What would help me understand the text? Why am I reading this book? What other books have I read on this topic? And what is going to happen next? What predictions can I make about the text? Okay, graphophonic includes visual. We teach kindergarten students, so visual is very important. Does it look right? Letter and sound correspondence. Questions which students should ask. What is the first letter or the last letter of the word? What do I see within that bigger word? It includes like prefix or a suffix, or for the two words that make up a compound word. So visual cues are very important for young readers such as kindergarten students. So we have pragmatic. The pragmatic method tells the reader of the purposes and desires of the reader. It governs what is relevant for the reader and must be understood. In certain programs, that pragmatic system is not officially accepted. The pragmatic system includes semantic systems, bringing into consideration the social, cultural, and historical context of language in use. Words can mean different things in different language settings. An example of pragmatic is if turning right on red and no traffic, then allowed to go. It is the one cueing device that is often lacking in textbooks reading strategies. Teachers should be sensitive to the society of their students and should be closely aware of the related functional dimensions. So this source was pulled from Goodman, Reading Strategies, Focus on Comprehension, and Hughes, Cueing Systems. Okay. So we're going to also discuss miscue analysis. It is important to know miscues of students when they're reading. So miscue analysis requires an understanding of the reading process and the ability to apply that knowledge and understanding to make inferences, to look for and see patterns, and to draw tentative conclusions to guide instructions. Miscue analysis is the product of a caring and informed teacher who tries to understand the reading of the students in his or her charge. So I did a miscue analysis on one of my students with a previous paper that I had to write. So the miscue analysis, I'm going to go over the markings. Miscue analysis includes substitution. It's useful to draw a thin line through the words or words that the reader did not say, and the substitution is simply written over the text. We have also insertion. The reader is probably looking ahead sufficiently to insert a word that would make the sentence sound more grammatical. We have omission. The reader removes the word in the text. A lot of students do this at a young age. They just skip over the words that they don't know, or occasionally they'll wait for the teacher to say the word for them. With a miscue analysis, you do not want to give the student the word. You want them to try their best to figure out the word in the context of the sentence. Occasionally, with omission, the meaning of the text can be changed. Omission of certain words may change the meaning of the entire sentence, which would cause problems to the listener as they would get incorrect information. We also have correction and or unsuccessful attempt at correction. We have repetition occurs when the reader repeats a word or phrase, not for the purpose of correcting, but for the purpose of reflecting or getting a running start to what comes next. This can be marked with underlining to indicate what part was repeated. We also have misarticulation and or immature speech patterns. You may see this in young children as well, which can be perceived as childish pronunciation. He or she were trying to overcome. So these are markings for miscue analysis. So with the student that I was telling you about, her name was Leticia. She's a kindergarten student of mine. We went over a book by Pam Bull. It's called Children Go to School. So she read sentences, and some of the miscues that she had, I put it in this presentation to discuss the miscues that we can look for. So children around the world go to school. Leticia omitted the word around. So with the omission of around, it changed the meaning of the sentence. Also, children around the world go to school. There was a misarticulation. She said word instead of world. Children, also with the next sentence, children around the world to get to school, she inserted to get. It should have just been go. Children around the world go to school. So it changed the meaning of the sentence. And the at school, that's not a sentence. She inserted the word the, it changed the whole meaning of that sentence. So with these miscues, these are different miscues that a reader can do, and these miscues change the meaning of the sentence. So it did not keep it intact, keep the meaning intact. Now with these miscues, These are miscues that preserve meaning. So Monday is the first day for school. She substituted and put the word for instead of. Also, children around the word go to school, Leticia self-corrected herself. It did not change the meaning of the sentence. They get backpacks, papers, and pencils. Leticia inserted an S in papers when it should have been, which made it plural, but it should have been singular. The word was singular, paper. Some children's get a ride from mom and dad. Leticia stated the word children's, and the word is children, a dialect. I understood what she said. She understood what she was reading. Some children ride bikes. It was a self correction. And they see old friends and make new ones. Leticia substituted the word ones for friends. So all of these miscues, the meaning was preserved. It did not change the meaning, and it did not, you know, she was able to understand what she was reading. So after completing the miscue, we want to do a retrospect miscue analysis. So it's revaluing the readers and strategies for helping readers. So analyzing miscues, you want to ask, how well did the reader use prior knowledge and context to predict effectively? How well or how appropriately did the reader use following context to correct or try to correct miscues that didn't fit with the following context and or that didn't leave the essential meaning of the sentence intact? Did the sentences, as the reader left them, make sense within the context of the whole text, or did the sentence preserve meanings essential to the story? So, retrospect miscue analysis. You want to look at teaching and learning procedures. Strategies. So, some strategies that you can use, students can revalue themselves as readers by teachers employing miscue discussions. Discuss with your students, their miscues and what they can do to prevent miscues. So readers can also speculate as to why they made different miscues, reconsider the nature of the reading process, revalue themselves as readers, and focus on developing and or referencing strategies for effective and efficient reading. So one strategy is a think aloud strategy. Select a text to read aloud with ambiguous words as students follow along. As you come to a trouble spot, stop and think. Think it through. Think aloud while students listen. When the text is complete, invite the students to add their own thoughts about the trouble spots encountered. Peer students and have them practice the procedure and take turns reading and responding to each other. So this strategy I pulled from Weaver, the reading process. That's a great strategy to use. Now, we also want to discuss implications for teachers. Teachers need to have an idea of the different aspects of the language, such as phonology, pragmatics, semantics, and syntax. Teachers should have explicit and planned instructions for reading skills. Teachers should provide a variety of material from easy, not so easy, to challenging and interesting reading materials. The process of reading gives support in understanding that reading may involve thought and language, miscues and errors, prior knowledge, interaction, and language. So, implications for teachers. Goodman's definition of reading is more truthfully redefined as a psycholinguistic guessing game, which involves interaction between thought and language. As a student becomes an efficient reader, he or she acquires the skill of deciding the productive cues to yield guesses that are correct. As a student reads material that is slightly challenging for him or her, the student will incur miscues. Miscues are substitutions, like we said, omissions, insertions, gathering of grammatical information, and to exercise graphic information. As a student experiences a miscue, if the student's decision does not interrupt the meaning or the grammar of a selected reading, the teacher does not have a reason to correct the student immediately. Remember, we should help the student do not interrupt the student while they're reading. Even if they don't know the word, let them read. Miscues are how the reader fulfills the psycholinguistic guessing game in reading, which is a selective, tentative, anticipatory process with components of experiences, syntax of language, and thought and development. Okay, so we have 5 essential components to a balanced reading program: phonological awareness, phonics, sight words and vocabulary development, reading fluency, and comprehension strategies. An increased repertoire of sight words will facilitate knowledge of letter sound relations and the ability to use sight word phonics, and increasingly sophisticated aspects of context will enable children to become more involved, proficient, effective, and competent readers. I forgot I did all of this. Okay. Phonological awareness and phonics skills. I forgot I did all of this. Okay. Phonological awareness. Awareness of the separable sounds in words.
Here's what I found.
Awareness of constituent sounds of written words and learning to read and spell. Knowledge of phonemes, onsets, rhymes, and syllables, and influences the development of word decoding and reading. Phonics skills instruction. Its relationships between letter and sounds, and a method of teaching reading that stress learning how letters correspond to sounds and how to use the knowledge in reading and spelling through various skills such as decoding and blending. Okay, we have phonics skills. Phonics skills are a mean to an end of successful reading that is a mechanism which activates a process of learning to read. Okay. That's my phone ringing in the background. I'm at school. Teaching phonics in context. Questions to ask. Why do educators teach phonics to very young learners? What should educators teach? Knowledge of sounds or skills? How can educators teach phonics effectively? Who is the best person to teach phonics in scope? Teaching phonics in context. Characteristics of our learners. So inadequate language environment, limited knowledge and repertoire of words. Question: how should educators cater for learners' needs and differences? Learner needs and difference. Teachers should become knowledgeable of students' background, learning styles, attitudes, relationship between phonics and other areas of learning. Question: how can educators help learners learn phonics effectively? Proactive teaching and active phonic skills. Implications for educators. Phonics should be meaningful and integrated part of an educator's curriculum and or reading program with multiple opportunities for learning, application, and solving learning problems. Educators must build on what students already know and give learners space to see patterns and draw inferences. Potential problems for learners that they face. Unfamiliar vocabulary, learners may find it difficult to draw an analogy. Unrelated to studies, to learners, it can be a barrier and cannot help to solve learning problems. No application, no explicit teaching of skills and how to apply them in the text. No feedback or assessment. So planning phonics and curriculum, we want to do integration, variation, and application. Planning phonics and curriculum. So surround phonics with areas of learning that make use of all existing resources such as big books, readers, and sound books. In today's technology, you'll use Google Slides, you'll use a whole lot of resources. Encourage active learning to build upon what students already know. Explicitly teach different essential skills. Provide feedback and reflect on students' learning through observations, summative and formative assessments. Big books. See? In kindergarten, we use big books for readers. Sight words. So words which are recognized as wholes on sight, words that cannot be phonetically produced, like one, two, you have, father, they. High frequency words, the and I, book, play, like, can. And words of special interest. Sorry. Cinderella, Frozen, Three Little Pigs, Witches, Spell, Magic, Frog. Okay. So the role of sight words in reading. Faster word recognition, less inference with comprehension, vocabulary expansion, and better comprehension. Word wall. Every teacher must use a word wall or a vocabulary book. To learn sight words, students must see the words in context many times. Students must hear the word and say the word out loud. Identify the word in isolation and in context. Students can learn sight words through games and activities such as reading sight words with a partner, sight word matching game. Vocabulary development. Educators can anchor words for students. Word walls, like we said, personal vocabulary books, word building, word analysis tied in with phonics. Kindergarten is big on word walls. We were virtual, so I don't have a word wall up. Vocabulary development. Okay. Vocabulary development. Educators can anchor words for students, word walls, personal vocabulary books, word building, and word analysis tied in with phonics, using words in writing. So vocabulary book, that's something that we use in kindergarten. So a balanced reading program. Reading fluency is very important. Okay, teachers have great insights into reading and should not teach reading to students as one child is identical to the next. Each learner learns differently. So here we go, a balanced reading program. Okay, we have fluent oral reading with expressions, silent reading, fluency, comprehension, word recognition, fast and accurate, and chunking words, syntactic cues, access to model of expressive reading. I've got okay. So a balanced reading program, comprehension strategies. Reading comprehension is the essence of reading and is necessary for the achievement of academic success to continue a lifetime of learning, as stated by the National Reading Panel. A balanced reading program. Teachers use strategies to develop students' reading volume, which promote reading fluency and achievement. Strategies that can be used in reading volume is repeated readings, which can be an effective intervention for proving reading fluency, which can be instituted with a peer or an audio tape recording. As students read, students will encounter words. As the words are correctly pronounced by the student, then an instance has occurred. A teacher must make efforts to expand the student's reading with volume and provide reading text that will produce a high level of accuracy. Instance theory permits a self-teaching hypothesis, which reveals as a student reads, the student is acquiring orthographic knowledge of both whole words and word segments. Students will read by using orthographic knowledge to facilitate pronunciation as they encounter words or an identical word segment occurring in a different word. Reading fluency is achieved through self-teaching, which originates from instance theory. As students employ self-teaching as a method, it strengthens reading proficiency such as vocabulary knowledge. Self-teaching develops a core set of words known as sight words. The ability to recognize many words with little conscious effort underlies the ability to read aloud with fluency. So we have various approaches. Psycholinguistics, which is brought together at the junction of psychology and linguistics. Miller communicates the psychological processes occur as people apply language and competence is gained as they develop as confident users of their language. Language has set guidelines that can generate an infinite number of sentences. As language users, we must differentiate what is acceptable and unacceptable grammatical use of language. As language users decipher what is acceptable use of a grammatical utilization of language, children encompass an innate predisposition for deciphering rules of language. So a child should be exposed to a variety of orthographic, syntax, and semantic written language that is interesting, comprehensible, not redundant, uninteresting text. Language has two levels that include surface structure and deep structure. Surface structure is, I can't even see that. Sounds of written representations of language, and deep structure is meaning. A sentence can only be understood by a reader in the way words interact with each other. Children who are not making sense of print are not reading. As we deep dive into the theories of the reading process, it is important for teachers to remember the discipline of psycholinguistics is new, and teachers must establish an understanding to educate in forms other than a text so that the reader can truly master reading and throw out the red tape from government bureaucrats. I got this source from Goodman, decoding from code to what? Reading as a transactional view. So it has meaning is constructed through complex transactions between the reader, text, and context. Reading is like we said, is a psycholinguistic guessing game. Hypothesis to confirmation, rejection, a process of sampling, predicting, confirming, and correcting. Comprehension is a complex process which requires active and intentional cognitive effort on the part of the reader. Okay, current practice. The new way of literacy, which is recent, can be described as whole language, which can be explained as children being taught about parts of language, whole learning around reading and writing. Whole language literacy was banned in the United States because it was said to be lacking in explicit and systematic teachings. Government and bureaucrats enlisted whole language, high stakes testing, and benchmarks to fuel the decline of literacy and to point the finger at educators. We all know about this, kindergarten teachers. Government and bureaucrats wanted to create an enhanced pedagogy of literacy and put into place accountability and standards to control the forces of education today. Many believe that the insistent control of government and bureaucrats trailblazed the decay of inequalities in education. We talk about this a lot in our kindergarten meetings. With current practice. So comprehension, meaning making of text is not a visible act, nor is it an audible act. In the article, Limitations on Reading and Learning to Read, it discusses teachers understanding that there are three aspects of reading, which include visual and non-visual information and fixation. The aspects of information involved in the reading process is what the author provides, which is called the visual information, and the reader provides the non-visual information. Reading involves information that the reader receives through his or her visual system and information that he or she already has available in his or her head behind their eyeballs. So the reader must supply knowledge of language, which is crucial for non-visual information. As students read, the less non-visual information a reader can supply, the more visual information the reader will need to be supplied from the page. In reading, the exchange between visual and non-visual information is critical to the function of the eye. The brain can manage 4 to 5 identifications from single fixation. Visual, non-visual, and fixation play a role in the memory of readers. Readers use short-term and long-term memory. During short-term memory, the reader carries as much meaning as possible. As a reader uses long-term memory, the reader organizes knowledge of the world. Okay, current practice. Comprehension lesson. So, begins with word-by-word decoding and translation with the with the introduction of vocabulary, followed by comprehension questions: who, what, when, where, why, how, why. We always ask these questions after reading. Well, most times. Ends with checking with little explanation. So repeated practice, and we have teaching and good performance and comprehension. Is that good performance and comprehension? Repeated practice and teaching? Let's see. Current practice. Problems. No training or higher order comprehension skills. Critical. Read for evaluation. No development of student skills in syntax and semantic knowledge of the world to confirm meaning. Loss of contextual focus and immediate frustration commence as soon as the reader encounters an unknown word. The role of an educator in reading. This is important. Role as educators must include expanding the repertoires of literacy and communication practices available to students. So what affects comprehension and meaning making? Students' self-concepts, their attitudes and interests, and or what do students think? Word consciousness strategies, comprehension / meaning making strategies. So, what do students think? So they have problems with phonemic awareness. Spanish speakers, like in today's classroom, we have a lot of diverse students. Spanish speakers learning English, for example, in English, D is one phoneme and the is another. A minimal pair of words that differs only by these sounds is then and then. However, in Spanish, the D sound and the th sound are allophones of one phoneme. In a word like Ito, finger or toe, the first D has a D sound and the second one has a sound. Spanish speakers ignore the difference between the D sound and the th sound because it, if never, makes a difference in meaning. However, Spanish speakers learning English may assume that a sound that doesn't make a different meaning in Spanish won't make a difference in English either. Therefore, it is important to focus on meaning, not just the sound. They have a limited sight word bank and vocabulary, so what do students think? So vocabulary knowledge is largely a product of independent engaged reading. A strategy that educators can use in the classroom is inventive spelling. Inventive spelling develops phonemic awareness and promotes understanding of the alphabetic principle. They struggle with their own identity as a reader. African American males encounter internal factors, which include self-concept and identity issues that are barriers to achievement, which are often exhibited as culturally specific coping mechanisms, such as behaviors as acting tough, failing to retreat from violence, avoiding and disassociating themselves from school. The external factors include structural racism, community patterns, parents, education attainment, and socioeconomic status. So critical transformative practices. So creates projects situated within their own experiences and life. World's projects that may contribute to changing inequities in the community and beyond. So provide multimodality as key element in the curriculum to support and extend and expand students' communication potential. Word consciousness strategies. So development of word consciousness, according to Graves, positions the learner to become metacognitively aware of words, as well as to establish a lasting interest in and motivation to learn new words. 6 language arts. We have listening, speaking, readings, writings, viewing, and visually representing text support the deepest understanding of words. Wordplay activities. Okay, wordplay activities. Students are asked to think of something positive they have experience by closing their eyes and to relive this experience. Students will then be asked what feelings are associated with the event that is remembered, and students will then write their word on paper. Students are then asked to complete a word association with the feeling associated with the event and discuss the word with the class. The activity is to position students to develop more complex and interesting words. So this is an activity, a strategy that you can use with your children. An extension of the activity is for students to generate a list of synonyms and antonyms for the words. Students are then asked to complete an illustration for at least one of the words on their list. With each different activity, students strengthen their understanding of their self-selected word while they further improve their vocabulary through ongoing group discussions of each classmate. So this was actually an activity that was researched by my professor, Dr. Peggy Albers. So I wanted to include that. I thought that was very cool. The word play activity strategy. All right. So here we go. Implications for educators. Multimodality. You ask yourself, what is multimodality? To address the literacy needs of English language learners, teachers must understand students' distinct cultures, languages, and struggles within the existing socio-political climate of the schools through key multimodality engagements, like such as PowerPoint, reading is our thing, iMovies, photographs, YouTube videos, cartoons, readers theater. We'll talk about that, followed by a demonstrated concept of a strategy and literature discussions. So, family and ethnic identity. Educators must establish a strong relationship with students by becoming knowledgeable of students' backgrounds and family contexts, which will bring about success in working with students who struggle with literacy. An example is two teachers that I read about, Emiliano and Rosita, were open with their students about their background and heritage and saw the commonality with students as a building block for teaching language arts. So this was also researched by my professor, Dr. Peggy Albers. So literacy engagements. So reread and discuss the poem Where I'm From by George Ella Lyons, which positions everyday objects and people in one's life as significant. So, so that can be a literacy engagement for students. Implications for educators. So effective reading instruction checklist for ESL students. Help students view themselves as successful readers and see reading worthwhile, turning written language into comprehensible input they need for academic language acquisition. Make text comprehensible by using intonation, gestures, pictures. Read to students, engage students in big books. Make audio tapes and stories. Use songs or chants on chart paper. We use a lot of chart paper in kindergarten. With stories, language experience stories such as field trips. Have your student retell a story as the teacher writes the sentences on chart paper. That is done a lot in kindergarten. So involve students in reading from various genres by choosing topics that interest the students, connect themes to students' experiences. Passion has summarized extensive research that shows free voluntary reading results in great gains in English proficiency and become more proficient readers. So have children read freely. Have free reading time, okay? Have 3 books available for students. One that is challenging, one that is about right on their level, and one that's a little bit easy. Employ cloze exercises, which give students a passage with blanks for some words and have the students work together to decide what words go in the blank. Cloze exercises help students use cues from the text to make sense of reading without stopping to look up words or asking the teacher, what does that mean? Okay. implications for educators, bilingual children. Use art of picture storybooks and responsive art experiences as opportunities for thinking aesthetically and communicating authentically. Okay, Lechner described picture books as portable art galleries. The integration of visual arts and language arts are complementary partners in meaning making and understanding the world, stated by Karen, by Ernst Gallus, Kiefer, Hoffman, and Kahn. Facilitate literature circles, encouraging aesthetics response to children's picture books. The circles offer a non-threatening structure, comprehensible input, and the potential for authentic communication. Read the English version most regularly, although sometimes read both English and Spanish texts. Read multicultural literature, which the main character is a member of racial, religious, or language microculture. Read multicultural literature, which the main character is a member of racial, religious, or language multicultural other than the Euro-American one. Children enjoy seeing images of diversity in their reading materials and to experience high-quality text and illustrations. Employ 3 avenues for students' responses, which include oral discussions, dialogue journals, and art experiences through drawing. Maxine Green stated the role of art in cultivating imagination as cognitive capacity and that a way to release the voice and overcome the silence of diverse young people. Implications for educators. What do we mean by literacy now? There are multiple literacies which include language, art, music, movement, etc. Different cultural groups induct their children into literacy in different ways. A language arts program in the 21st century must encompass meaning making, language, student, and inquiry based learning. Language is a social meaning making process which is learned from being in the presence of others. Educators can create a space that encourages dialogue between classmates. A strategy an educator can employ in his or her classroom for meaning making is one observation, one connection, one question from a text. Implications for educators. The power of reading. Educators must be knowledgeable of the background and the community on which the students come from in order to connect students with books and make good selections about placing books in our classroom libraries. Surround students with great reading of fiction and nonfiction and multicultural texts, such as Reader's Theater. This was a great example. Label and highlight the speaking parts of a particular character for one book. This can be used with older kids, like I would say 3rd and up. An example, The Giver. I have one book with labeled Jonas, which is a character, where all his speaking parts are highlighted, another labeled and highlighted for The Giver, another for Fiona, which was a character in the book The Giver, another for the mother, and so on. So whatever book is being read aloud, the teacher will provide multiple copies of the books prepared in this manner. Students will volunteer to read, and students begin to connect language and meaning by seeing and hearing it. Students will be taking meaning to and from text as they are learning. So I thought this was a great example, Reader's Theater, which is a great strategy and activity. So implications for educators, African American males and diverse students of today's classroom. The 4 literacy needs are academic, cultural, emotional, and social. Enabling text. Go beyond sole cognitive focus and introduces literature that is geared towards cultural upliftment, economic advancement, resistance to oppression, and intellectual development. That's key. So, the conclusion is educators must establish the significance of a variety of instructional approaches and a multiple of contexts which focus on the development and cultural differences as it relates to how children will develop a reading literacy in a democratic society. So thank you for joining me for this presentation at school. I hope everyone has a nice day. One moment. Let me see how I can stop this. Thank you, everyone. Does anyone have any questions or concerns? All right. How do I stop this? I don't even know. All right. Thank you. Have a good afternoon.